Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Study Chronicles. Today we're going to be continuing the under the gun versus big blind scenario, but this time from the big blind's perspective. So this is going to be the last single raise pot that we look at. I think it is one of the more interesting nodes, having a tighter range versus a wider range. You see a lot of interesting heuristics pop up, and that can be applied for not only Six Max Online, but also for live poker. I hope that this series has been helpful so far for you guys. I think it's something that you can take away into every single format of poker, including live, MTTs, whatever. A lot of this is based in theory. A lot of it is, we're using GTO Wizard to look at the heuristics to figure out all of our strategies. So you can take this process and apply it to pretty much anything that you are playing as well. So hope it's been helpful. Let's dive into the next scenario, shall we? So wrapping up the under the gun versus big blind node, we're going to look at the big blind's perspective facing a raise from under the gun. So like always, we're using the NL 500 GTO ranges, and we are opening for a min raise from under the gun. Big blind is going to defend here, and you can see that out of the big blind versus under the gun, I believe we have the lowest frequency of 3-betting. So if we were to compare something like the button versus the big blind, we'll see that our 3-bet frequency is about around 14%. And then when we look at the under the gun position, our 3-bet goes down to 5.1%. And not only does the frequency go down a lot, but also our range construction changes significantly. So we're not going to be 3-betting perhaps as linear as we would against the big blind, but we are going to have a more polarized range. We're going to have more suited aces that we're using to 3-bet versus under the gun. We're having some weak suited kings, and not so much of this, Jack 9, 10, 8, 10, 8. Sorry, Jack 9, Jack 8, 10, 8 type hand, which is very prominent in button versus big blind, as you can see here. These combos are much more of a 3-bet. You'll see also that, Jack highs are being used, queen highs are being used, 10 highs even are being 3-bet against the button. But when it comes to also the offsuit broadways, but when it comes to facing an under the gun raise, all of those offsuit broadways start mixing call and mostly call. And then all of the suited combos are not 3-betting nearly as often. So those suited jacks, those suited tens, even like suited one gappers, they're all starting to call. And this is just because you're facing a tight range, right? You're facing a tight range. We have more relevant blockers with our high cards, so we prioritize those high cards in our 3-bet frequencies. And so that's why we see a lack of suited jacks, a lack of suited tens, and also the stronger hands, because you have a tighter range from under the gun. Queens plus are going to be more relevant to block because we're not blocking as many strong hands in terms of frequency with the jack. Not blocking some 4-bets, stuff like that. So going back and forth, you can kind of figure out why the big blind is kind of shaping their 3-bet range this way. But for the most part, you can just chalk it up to, we want to have a more polarized range versus a tighter under the gun open, and we want to have more blocker effects with our 3-bets to create more fold equity, to remove more strong hands from under the gun's range. All right. We do have some offsuit aces in our range for 3-betting as well. Ace 5, Ace 4. This is something I've been trying to incorporate more in my play, is being more aggressive with these combos out of position versus early position. Something like Ace 10, Ace 8, still going to have a 3-bet frequency here. And then mostly our suited connectors, right? 5, 4 suited plus, pretty easy to remember this. There's not pretty straightforward. There's no gap, and we're just pretty much using every single suited connector here, all the way up to ace king suited. 4-3 is the threshold. And then the strongest pair that we are always 3-betting is kings. And then we're even mixing queens facing a raise. So we do have some strong hands post flop. We're also calling ace king off and ace queen suited. So a lot of strong hands still in our range. I think this might surprise some people if they're used to playing a more aggressive game, but definitely need to call some stronger hands like queens, jacks, etc. All right. So once we call, we've kind of teased at this before, but how often should we lead? Well, now that we're playing out of the big blind versus under the gun, this is the smallest frequency lead that we have. So about a 3% lead. It's going to be on the textures that we have grown to understand our leads. Typically, the lower textures, 8 high and lower. And then we have some monotone boards with an ace, some ace wheel board textures, but for the most part, you'll see boards like 874, 976, 854, pretty much those low card combos. And then if we are going to lead a paired board, it's going to have a 5 or a 6 in it generally, 5, 6, or 4. Anything lower than a 6 in a paired board can have a mixed lead, I believe. So looking at even something like 10, 10, 9, something I probably haven't been leading enough on, right? There's a lot of different textures that you might not expect as a paired board, but when you have a lot of trip combos in your range for defending, so we have a lot of those like 10-7 suiteds, 9-8 suiteds. So when we see those middling paired boards like 7-7-4, 8-8-7, 10-6-6, right? Those are the ones that might be an option to lead for us. So keeping that in mind, I don't think a lot of people are actually doing that right now. They're more so leading these textures that are more intuitive, like 7-6-4, 6-5-4, 6-5-3, etc. All right. Most of the time, though, we are going to check. And facing a bet, which is going to be the most common size from under the gun, 33. How do we play this? Well, we're going to play a 50% raise or 100% raise. So we have a check raise frequency of roughly 14%, a little bit higher. And we're folding not a majority, but fairly high frequency at 41.9%. And then we're calling about 43%. So most of the time we're going to call or fold. We have a low frequency of check raising. Is this larger or smaller than later position? Well, let's take a look real quick. So just out of curiosity, if the button raises, we defend the big blind. We go ahead and check. Button uses the small sizing, right? We see that we have a roughly 14% frequency for check raising. So very similar to the button, in fact. I think what's going to change our check raise frequency more so than the position is going to be the sizing that's used. So let's say we do have a defend here out of the big blind and villain opts to use the larger sizing this time instead of the small sizing. Now we're going to see a big reduction in the frequency of check raising. So something like 8%, 9% here. As opposed to the 14% versus the smaller size. We're also going to have a higher fold frequency. No surprise there. This is all just fundamental bet sizing theory. The larger the villain bets, the less we want to continue. And also the less we're going to check raise because our overall range is just shrinking. And also the shape of the range is going to change as well, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully in some of the drill spots, we'll see some of this come up and we can address it as it does. What else should we look at? If villain overbets, how do we respond against that? Mostly going to use the smaller raise size and at a low frequency. So only 6% raise here. And again, just the fold frequency going up. I think that about covers it for pre-flop. Let's see, is there anything surprising that we want to look at for our defense here? Maybe the surprising thing would be that we're actually defending these weak suited 10s and 9s at a frequency. I think a lot of players might find that surprising. Otherwise, I don't think there's too much here. Maybe something like the offsuit one gappers, Jack 9, 10, 8, 9, 7, 8, 6. This might be, a bit wide for some players. Maybe they're not defending these hands enough against the min raise. But again, if you do switch up the raise sizing pre-flop, so let's put in a 2.5x raise from under the gun, that's going to significantly change the big blind's defense. And you can see even the no gapper offsuit combos are folding now. So you have to be really tight when it comes to under the gun increasing the sizing of their raise. And then we also see a lot of these suited combos start folding all the way up to suited queens. So keeping that in mind, when you're facing a 2.5x. Now, there's also a 3x that, again, we've always looked at when we're looking at these pre-flop ranges. So let's take a quick look at that. So if we add 3x here, and then we raise to 3x, our big blind defense frequency is even tighter. So look at all of these folds now from even hands like Jack 8 suited, King 7 suited, Queen 8 suited, which is actually a mix of a 3-bet versus a min raise, which is interesting, right? So all of the offsuit broadways are starting to fold at a very high frequency. So only the top part of it, Ace Jack plus, King Queen plus, are going to be a defense here. And we're not defending any offsuit aces when it comes to facing a 3x size. And you'll also see the 3-bet frequency is still very similar, still uses suited aces, still uses those suited no gappers, and still uses queens and kings plus. But you do see a big shift in the frequency of our continuing versus that 3x. So let's get into some drills, shall we? Let me reset this to NL 500, 100. Oh yeah, gotta go here. There we go. So yeah, like I said, Queen 8 suited, you actually see some 3-bets versus the min raise, but then versus 3x, we're just pure folding it. So very big difference facing these smaller and bigger sizings. Okay, so I created a drill, big blind versus under the gun. Let's jump in. Hero is big blind, villain is under the gun, and we are going to get to the flop and face most likely a bet. All right, our first decision, 8-7 deuce. This is a texture that we can probably lead at a frequency. 8 high textures typically are. The thing is, though, that this deuce is pretty far away from the 7. So if there's not too many straights out there, then our range might be weakened because we don't have those straights that under the gun doesn't have. But maybe we still have enough of a range that can still lead this texture. I rolled aggressive, so I think this usually you don't want to lead diamonds or clubs, but if it's ever a frequency of lead, I think we're supposed to. So this is I'm usually defaulting to check as a safe bet. So if I was thinking about this in game, I would have just checked by now because I don't want to bet in a spot that I think is possibly not a bet, but I'm taking a risk here by betting. And of course it's not a bet. Is 8-7-2 actually a board we can lead? Because I'm a little concerned it's too disconnected for us to have a leading range. Usually you want to be leading the more connected boards. Yeah, so this one isn't even a lead for the big blind, but if we even change this 2 to something like a 4, I think we'll see that all of a sudden we're now leading at a decent frequency. So it really does matter the connectivity of the board texture out of the big blind here. And then when you see you add the 3 and there's no straights possible now, we start checking pure. So make sure that the board texture is somewhat connected if you're going to lead. Now that we get to the turn, I think I'm just going to check. So if you do something that's not a play, typically the solver is going to check that combo after you do it on the turn. And on the river, we're going to go for value here, betting 73 or 150. Let's go for the 150. Let's be polarized here. We have trips, makes sense. Let's do it. There we go. All right. Next hand, 8-5-5. Now this is a texture we can lead because remember paired boards with 5-5 typically are okay to lead. This hand is not something we really are excited about leading, but we're also not excited about check calling or check raising. So leading might fit into the strategy here at a frequency. It might be okay to lead this hand. It might be fine to check this hand. I'm going to go for a check this time. I think it's the safe bet, but we do see this lead here start developing. Once it goes check, check, and the 9 comes off, we have really good blockers on this texture. We have the Ace of Hearts, which is relevant because we can bluff Heart Rivers if we bet the turn. We have a 9, which is good because there is a concept in a wide versus tight range, which I think some people call it the mirror concept, where if you have 9-6, some of your bluffs might be 9x, right? And this isn't because we're blocking straights from villain. This is because we are blocking relevant blockers. Stay with me. We're blocking relevant blockers for Under the Gun to bluff catch with. So if Under the Gun has pocket 9s, we're blocking those, even though Under the Gun doesn't have a hand like 9-6. It's still relevant because we're blocking the pocket 9s. But also if Under the Gun has something like 9-8 suited, Ace 9 might even be a good continue for villain. And then you'll see this more pronounced when it's about hands that don't necessarily have a made hand for the villain, but villain's best cards are going to be the cards that, you know, for the big blind do block their range. So for the big blind, we have 9-6. So Under the Gun's 6x and 9x are going to go up in value, which means if we have a 9 or a 6, then we have a better bluff. So it's kind of like a back and forth, you know, like, okay, I have this combo, so the best combos for Under the Gun are this combo, so then we want to take away that combo. So it's not, my whole point is that it's not a direct combo removal in terms of like hand strength, but it's more so like the relevant card for both players, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm rambling a little bit, but you guys get the idea. So Ace 9, going to go ahead and bet here, going to go for the 76% this time. We can mix between overbet, small bet, medium bet, and large bet. And now the heart comes off, so we have a relevant hand to bluff with. What sizing should we go? I would guess if we're targeting really strong hands here, so like we're removing the Ace of Hearts, which means we're trying to fold out non-flushes, but you know, they could have overpairs that check back flop. They could have 7x. They could have medium strength hands like pocket 9s, pocket 6s, pocket 4s, etc. So I think overbet or large bet is the play here. Do we have showdown value? I don't really think so. They're not floating with just king high on the turn. So I think we're going to go for the bet 133 on the river. Yeah, it's either bet 133 or bet 62. Those were the two kind of sizings that made sense to me there. And villain had ace king, so nice. All right, ace 8 versus Under the Gun. We're going to check again. So this is a board texture. We're going to see a lot of betting. We do see an overbet from Under the Gun. I believe, don't raise very frequently, but if we did, we do have pocket queens, pocket 2s, and ace queen. So it would make sense that we have some frequency of raise. I wouldn't want to raise with this combo though. You do see a little bit of raise peeking through here, but not enough to be significant. Ace queen deuce 3 turn. So this is a matter of, do we lead now or not? Because we're going to have a lot of flushes by the turn, especially when there's an ace on the board. We have a lot of suited kings, jacks, queen X. So I think we can have a mixed lead here for the small sizing. If I'm not mistaken, maybe even have a 50% lead. And I rolled aggressively here. This is a hand that does better as a check though, because it is a medium strength hand. So as a safe bet, I'm going to go ahead and check. But I do think we can start developing a leading range on this turn. Let's take a look. Yeah, there is a high frequency lead, and we are going to choose a couple of sizings for the lead. We have a 20% and a 50%. And I think 50% is just going to look a bit more polar, have more flushes, have more semi bluffs that might have peeled wide, like the backdoor broadways with hearts, maybe a single spade with a Broadway. We're going to use those as our bluffs. 5-3, 5-4, or sorry, 5-3 and 4-3. And then we have, again, some of the king high with one spade, but not too many good hands are going to lead this texture. We do have some two pair combos like ace deuce, ace three, ace four, ace five, hands that potentially block the straights. And then you have kind of these merged leads with queen jack, perhaps turning these into a bluff. We also have, this. And then so a lot of our best hands are going to be these flushes that lead at a frequency. So yeah, making sure that you're leading on the board changing turn after you defend versus an overbet. Very important part of your strategy. Once it goes check, check. At this point, I think our only option is either bet small or check. I don't think we get to go large at all. So I think bet 19% is a good sizing. We have a relevant blocker in the eight of spades. Less likely they checked back some kind of flush. So I think I'm going to go 19%. But this time it looks like the solver just wants to pure check. And we get called by better. So yeah, I guess we're just going to check and mostly check call if we were going to check there. I can't imagine we're going to check fold very often, but maybe. Next hand, ace queen eight. Let's have a look at this hand here. So if we do check the river and villain goes for the most common bet size, which is going to be 76, we will see ace eight with the eight of spades is mixing a bet. So I am definitely not folding this enough. I am pure calling for sure, especially when I have the spade. Yeah. So I can stand to perhaps give a little bit more credit towards value by river once the three of spade comes after the overbet. Ace queen eight, we are going to check, and then I think I'm just going to check fold next hand. Queen jack, this is just an easy check fold. This is going to be a pure bet from villain. Pocket jacks, ace 10-2. I think we're going to always check, and then facing a bet, I think we're going to just call. Doesn't make sense to raise. We can in fact fold, which is surprising, but I guess that makes sense because of all of the strong hands under the gun is going to have. The playability of this hand isn't very good either, right? If we do get double barreled, we're not in a great spot. We're probably going to have to check fold the turn. Villain did use a little bit of a larger sizing here with the half pot size, but I am surprised to see that we can fold the flop. I don't think we would ever fold versus like the cutoff or the button, but we don't really have jacks in that scenario, so it's not the same. Once the three comes off, maybe we can have a lead frequency, but mostly going to check this combo. And then versus the turn bet, I think we're just going to see a pure fold. Ace 10-3, another ace high board, going to check folds. Again with the half pot sizing. All right, here's a board that we can lead. We have top pair. This is a good spot to have a leading frequency. We rolled aggressive. Seems like all of the stars are aligning here for a lead. So we do lead, but it's not going to be a high frequency. It's going to be only 16%. On the turn, this is a very good turn for our range, which means we're likely going to have a smaller sizing. And so we're going to just bet small again on the turn. And we take it down. Queen 9-7, going to be a check, and then facing another check. Um, do we ever have a small bet on turn? I think so. I think the safe bet is to check, because if we take a look at the most common play after a flop which favors under the gun goes check, check, our most frequent play is going to be check. So if you want to be safe here, I think check is the play. You can see here 54% of the time we are going to check. If the turn is a brick, same thing. I think even more of a check, actually. Yeah. So when the turn comes a spade, we have all of the sizings, and 9-8. I'm going to check this time, but we can go for the small bet, probably for protection, probably because we have some value against some floats, right? On river, I think we definitely want to go small now, but we can also still check. That's good. And we get value from a7. King, queen, 8, never leading. I think this one is just going to be a check fold, especially versus the larger sizing. Yeah, even though we have the backdoor hearts, it's just not going to be good versus the large sizing. Even against the small sizing, I have a feeling we're going to fold this one. You really want to have the flush on the board if there is a flush draw out there. So having a spade in our hand takes priority over having like backdoor flushes. So let's say under the gun goes 33 here, which I think they can at a mix, low frequency. A7 of hearts is still going to just be a pure fold, yeah. So just making sure you don't get too out of line in that scenario. And then as you can see, ace-8 with an ace of spades is going to be a pure continue with an aggressive raise. So again, having like the spade is going to be more relevant than having the backdoor hearts, because we're blocking more relevant hands that villain can c-bet with, etc., etc. So yeah, ace-10-4, again, going to just check here. I think jack-10 plays better than jack-jack, so we're going to see a lot more continues. Once the turn pairs, I think we can have a lead at a frequency, but mostly we're just going to check with this combo. I do wonder if top pair versus the smaller sizing, I don't think we want to be as incentivized to lead. But if villain had gone overbet and then the turn paired, I think we would possibly see more. I think we would possibly see more leads because our range would be tighter and we have more ace-x. So again, there's that heuristic of like, if our range becomes tighter and then the turn comes, you know, within that range, we'll see a lot of leads. So big blind, is it ever leading top pair pairing? No. But let's say under the gun goes for the larger sizing. Let's say they go, let's do the extreme example. And then top card pairs. Look at this. Look how often we're leading on the top card now. So this is exactly what I was saying, where our continuing range is so narrow towards having an ace that when the ace pairs on the turn, we have trips at such a high frequency that now our range, almost our entire range, wants to lead. So depending on the sizing they use, you're going to see a lot more leads than not. So if we use the large sizing, we still see a lot of leads, a lot of leads here on top pair pairing. So just keeping that in mind. All right, let's go over a couple more spots. Pocket jacks. This is going to be a lead board texture, and we rolled aggressive, so let's go for the lead. I think we can continue with value here. Jacks is going to be ahead of a lot of under the guns range. So now it's just a matter of what sizing do we use after we lead? Do we have an overbet? Do we have a large bet? Do we have a small bet? What do we do? I rolled an 85. How strong is their continuing range versus a lead? I think it's pretty wide. So I think we can be aggressive with this combo. I'm going to say let's go the 75 sizing. a little too aggressive, I guess. 33 is the sizing if we're going to continue to bet here. But I am curious to see what our range wants to do if we do ever have like a more aggressive sizing. And by aggressive, I just mean larger. Because it would make sense if we lead some nuts combos that we have an overbet. We do in fact have an overbet on the turn. We even have a 250% sizing, which is something I'm not using probably enough of. But those combos are going to come from 6x. So really more polarized to having the nuts or a blocker or a set, maybe some high equity straight draws, but yeah, very polarized there. And then we have more of the medium and small sizing. So it looks like we're mostly breaking up our strategy into small sizing and very polarized sizing. And then we have a little bit of this like medium strength sizing, which is going to be like pair plus straight draw, maybe like pocket nines, pocket tens, something that's more medium strength in the scheme of both ranges. Something like king queen suited, not sure why that's in there, but makes sense to like block ace king and ace queen, which would continue versus a bet, right? So if we bet 50 here, I think ace king and ace queen are still going to have to continue. So we are blocking those combos with king queen, right? So yeah, interesting spot. And now after I bet large, it makes more sense to have a non-large sizing here. So 35. Yeah, because this hand can't really get 3 streets of value very easily. A lot of the hands that continue versus the large size on the turn are going to be better by the river. So any of their 7x, any of their queens, kings, and aces, maybe they've slow played some sets like 7s, 8s, 5s. So we don't really have the option of going large for value here. And then we get check raised, or then we get raised on river, which is pretty rough. We don't have a good bluff catcher. We're not blocking any of their strong hands. And also we should have a balanced range on the river here for betting small. So we should have hands like pocket 8s, pocket 5s, 7x, right? Although we're not going to bet as much 7x on turn for the large sizing, so it's going to be a bit more polarized for us. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and fold this time, but I think that we probably can mix, and we can kind of mix here between the options. All right, let's go over one more and we'll wrap it up. Queen 5-2, we're going to have a pure check, and I think this one is going to be a check fold. Let's find one that we actually VPIP. Here we go. 10-8-5, going to be a pure check. And if we do face a bet, we're going to continue. I don't think this is going to be a raise. This is the larger sizing. So we're a little concerned, but going to go ahead and call. Very close to a 0 EV decision with 9s already versus a larger sizing. So versus a larger sizing, if villain is correctly constructing their ranges, we're behind most of the value, if not all of the value, right? Most of their hands that can go large are going to be ace 10 plus or 10x plus. So 9s just immediately becomes a bluff catcher if villain uses the large sizing. If villain uses the smaller sizing, now we're starting to beat some combos like ace high, maybe 8x, maybe, whatever that they might be merging. Turn, we're going to go ahead and check. We do see a little bit of a lead emerging here though. The 4 does complete some straights, goes check, check. And at this point, again, we're behind all of their 10x and ahead of all of their semi-bluffs or their weak hands. So we have a bluff catcher. I think we can go ahead and check here or small bet. Both are going to be fine. I don't think we get enough value from small betting, so I'm going to go ahead and check. It does look like we are mixing the small bet, but primarily using the check. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Study Chronicles. I hope you guys enjoyed. That's going to wrap up the single raise pots. So next time we're going to have a look at 3 bets. Pots. I'm actually excited. It sounds so nerdy, but I am really excited to get into some of the 3-bet and the 4-bet scenarios, because you start looking at tighter ranges, you start using some interesting blockers, and yeah, it's going to really help your game. So don't miss those. And if you do like this series, please like and subscribe. It helps support me and it helps encourage me to continue making these videos. All right, guys, I will see you on the next one.